Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain and welcome to the DCOM review. 2006 could be considered one of the biggest years in the history of DCOMs. With it came the rise of the most popular DCOM of all time, the greatest soundtrack of all time, and unfortunately a few less memorable movies. And in that year, Disney took a huge risk by greenlighting a project that was part Jackie Chan movie, part Power Rangers episode, part Eastern folklore, and part conventional high school stuff we've all grown accustomed to. How did it all turn out? Well, let's discuss. Spoiler warning now, you all know the drill. With all that said, let's take a closer look at Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior. We start things off in a Mongolian temple. You'd think that maybe we'd be in Nepal or probably Tibet for this sort of thing, but Mongolia also has strong historical roots to Buddhism. An unconventional but interesting start. We're introduced to Shen, portrayed by Shin Koyomada, who, unfortunately, never got the chance to contribute to more Disney-related projects, but he was awesome in the Disney Channel games. He schools a couple of martial arts monks before being tasked with a very important mission to help the next Yin warrior defeat Yan Lo. That warrior just so happens to be Wendy Wu, portrayed by Brenda Song, who's done a couple of DCOMs in her day, but is likely remembered best as London Tipton from both Sweet Life shows. She's the most popular girl in school apparently, and is completely focused on winning Homecoming Queen, which, ironically, would make her the antagonist in any other movie. And I just can't help myself but to geek out a little bit at the fact that Anna Hutchinson and Sally Martin are in the same movie. My fellow Ranger fans will get it, and it actually doesn't stop there, but I'll focus up for now. So, a girl named Jessica is also gunning to be Homecoming Queen, something that Wendy is none too pleased about, so she tries harder to campaign for herself. Later on, we get a mysterious box that gives off an eerie green light. I wonder if the villain could be inside. Shen eventually finds Wendy's home, but his straightforward tell the female lead her entire destiny bit goes about as well as you'd expect. But it does give us another great look at the fight choreography we get in this movie. You can already tell that the same guy that handled that aspect of Power Rangers for years is in charge here too. So, the mysterious box from before starts possessing people now, which eventually leads to the possession of Wendy's brother Peter. Possessed Peter is attempting to take out Wendy, and now the gloves are off, and it's finally time for a true-to-form, no-holds-barred fight sequence. Other than the fact that Wendy, and the rest of the neighborhood for that matter, never really spring awake from any of this, it's a great fight. You can see a brilliant use of space and environment here that complements the moves themselves, in addition to some ridiculous stuff too, just for fun. So, Evil Green Spirit, which I'll just start calling Yan Lo, possesses the dog, leaving Peter completely unaware of the last few minutes. It bears noting that all this time, Nina Wu, the mother of the family, has been hard at work on a Chinese exhibit for her museum, which conveniently connects to a few of the legends that Wendy and Shen are directly a part of. But it also accomplishes something much more powerful for the parents here that we'll break down a little later on. We also learn that Grandma Wu has a very solid grasp on all of this, including the legend of the Yin Warrior. So Shen continues trying to protect Wendy in a ridiculous looking chase scene before Wendy pulls out some Shaolin soccer moves and starts to realize that maybe Shen's story is worth a listen. But convincing her to actually train to save the world is another challenge entirely. This goes on for a while before Wendy is motivated by a looming world history test. It seems like an easy move to make her one academic challenge based around history that she should, in theory, be more privy to, but that also ties nicely into the movie right alongside the importance of the parents. So, Shen convinces her that through meditation, she can access the grand spanning history of China since her past lives actually lived that history. Funny how this movie seems to understand Avatar better than The Last Airbender did. So, with the promise of being better prepared for her upcoming exam, she agrees to train with Shen. Now, I do feel like the training montage itself was a bit of a missed opportunity. It's fine as far as these things go, but I feel like the generic hero song they used in the backdrop should have been replaced with a Chinese song. The score itself is already very heavily Eastern in vibe, so why not go all the way with it? A minor grievance, yes, but I like to think it's a well-founded one, if nothing else. So Wendy aces the test, but she's still firmly fixated on Homecoming. Later on, Shen goes to the Wu residence and finds a way to make pretty much everyone happy, including helping out Mrs. Wu with her museum exhibit. But it produces some mixed feelings for Mr. Wu. Wendy and Shen then go to the mall for shopping because why not, and then Shen shows up at school next day looking like a brand new man. But before that, we get a pretty potent scene with the parents, both of them regretting not connecting to their culture more growing up. With Shen now blending in, and Wendy pretty much convinced regarding her Yin Warrior identity, Shen informs her of his personal destiny. He is to sacrifice himself in the battle against Yan Lo. With both their fates set, the only thing left to do is complete Wendy's training and face Yan Lo himself. But before that, we get a random party scene which can sort of count as the every DCOM as it stands cliche, and then we get to the rest of Wendy's training, as she learns different styles of martial arts from possessed versions of her own teachers. The training itself is pretty cool for the most part, and the fight at the end, where Wendy brings it all together to beat every master, is just awesome. A one-note character, Brenda Song is not. She was nothing short of fierce here, and it was a treat to witness. So after she finishes training, she soon discovers that she's one homecoming queen. However, Shen also reveals that the battle with Yanlo shall take place on the same night. That's something we pretty much all saw coming, but it's handled exceptionally well here, as we'll discuss in detail soon. So Yanlo, who has now possessed the body of Wendy's rival Jessica, starts animating terracotta warriors, sending the security guard running. Wendy is hell-bent on going to homecoming despite her destiny, while Shen is forced to face Yanlo by himself. But Wendy's teachers turned monks are now on the scene trying to convince her to join the fight. She's still reluctant until she realizes that Shen is in danger and rushes into action. Once her and the monk teachers get there, they assist Shen and put a smackdown on Yanlo's warriors while Wendy confronts Yanlo in Jessica's body. And, just like in Power Rangers, the villains even give Wendy time to morph, I mean change, into her battle attire from her homecoming dress. Kind of a silly moment, yes, but the battle before and after more than makes up for it. She even unleashes a wave of pure energy to knock out Yanlo and return Jessica back to her mind. I freaking love this movie. But, just like any good battle, it ain't over until you face the final form, which, in this case, means Yanlo appearing physically for the first time in forever. He easily disposes of the teachers and starts draining the life out of Shen. It seems like his destiny will be fulfilled, but Wendy saves him by giving him some of her life energy? Not really sure where she learned energy transfer from, probably a past life thing, but in any case, it brings Shen back into the fight, and they defeat Yanlo with a mighty aerial kick, thus destroying him now and for all time. So, the day is saved, the teachers are none the wiser about what's been going on, Grandma's making mooncakes, Wendy and Shen are free to live the rest of their lives, and all of Mama Wu's terracotta warriors are destroyed. Oh, too bad about that exhibit. And now, the characters. Peter doesn't add too much to the story, but it's kind of nice to see Justin Chon in something that isn't Twilight, and they give him a pretty awesome action scene too. I think Grandma Wu, however, was a pivotal character in helping establish a connection to the mythos surrounding this movie's story. She's kind of like Aggie Cromwell in that way, except with much less screen time, but still a very good supporting character. Yanlo doesn't really have an actual character since he doesn't talk much and bounces around from body to body, so not too much to say about him. He's really just an antagonist who finally finds his way into Jessica's body for the final battle before becoming a stone warrior himself. The parents, however, are crucial supporting characters, and it all stems from the question of what it means to be Chinese American. It's not a question I could ever answer personally, but it is one that is very well framed in the context of this movie. Both of them find themselves at different crossroads with their culture, a culture that they never paid too much attention to growing up, and in doing so, raise kids that place even less stock in it. But once Shen comes around and allows them to see what they've been missing, it's pretty powerful. They both realize that they were wrong to ignore that aspect of themselves in favor of a more westernized lifestyle, which the movie wisely divides into two separate forms. For Mrs. Wu, it's her career that not being connected to her stories is negatively affecting, because now she has to try twice as hard to figure all this stuff out. And for Mr. Wu, it's more personal than that, because he starts to realize the inherent value of connecting with your past. In the background, this film paints a beautiful portrait using the tapestry of cultural identity, something almost no DCOM has ever done, and in doing so, develops two parental characters in advanced ways, the likes of which only one other DCOM has ever done. Brenda Song brings it as Wendy Wu. Her acting in terms of dialogue delivery and character interactions is nothing you'd be unaccustomed to given her previous work, but she also does really well in terms of physical acting. It's literally London Tipton, but a badass, and she really makes it work. Her tendency towards perpetually avoiding the main conflict until she absolutely has to deal with it can get a bit tedious, but it also makes sense given the character she's asked to play. She also has a pretty nice rapport with Shin here, even though he's portraying a much more stoic character. I don't think it's necessarily one of the better leading lady performances, but it's solid and it serves its purpose well. It is a little weird, however, calling her a homecoming warrior, and the whole point of the climax was that she never ended up going to homecoming because fighting Yanlo and saving Shen was more important. This also serves as an interesting point of subversion for both her character and the movie. How many times have we seen the leading lady celebrated at homecoming or prom or any variation of the two after going through a major development arc? But in choosing the things that matter most, such as Shen and the cultural perspective he represents, the movie doesn't even bother with homecoming itself, and in doing that, avoids the easy trope of having the lead characters win twice, which would have sapped away all the importance of having Wendy sacrifice being homecoming queen. Speaking of Shen, even though his character is relatively straightforward both in demeanor and mindset, he's really, really good here, especially with his martial arts background. It was a great detail to have his interactions change and ease up over time as he and Wendy got closer, in addition to giving him some much needed moments of levity where he could just tell a few jokes. He's the reason Wendy's ready to stop Yan Lo. But it goes so much deeper than that, because in fact, he's the reason any of the characters develop at all. Shen is more than just a character. He actually functions as a brilliant metaphor regarding identity, knowledge, destiny, and the importance thereof. By representing these things, he's able to not just help Wendy prepare for her upcoming bout with evil, but he's also directly responsible for allowing her parents to better appreciate their own culture as well. Similar to the way that Cyrus functioned as a means to help other characters understand their own truth, Shen allows Wendy and the Wu family to uncover lost aspects of their own identity, and all of them end up the better for it. And, as an aside, I think Shin Koyamada really missed his calling as a Power Ranger. He would have made a pretty good one. And that's Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior. So, what's the verdict? Wendy Wu is one of the best, but also one of the most underappreciated DCOMs ever made. It accomplishes feats that no other DCOM has even dared to try, and did so while being fun, engaging, and memorable in its own right. A lot of that has to do with the martial arts present here, which is one of the many things that separates this DCOM from its peers. Fight choreography that you just can't get with any of the other 103 movies. And they made the brilliant choice of hiring Koichi Sakamoto to handle those elements. And there's no shortage of Ranger personnel here. So, if you allow me to geek out for a bit, not including Koichi himself, we've got Anna Hutchison from Jungle Fury, Sally Martin from Ninja Storm, James Galen from RPM and Dino Charge, and to top it all off, the security guard is Jeff Dolan, who has lended his voice talents multiple times, including doing the voices for Daishi and Gosei. I'm sorry guys, I just can't help it. I just freaking love this movie, especially what we get on the surface level. But, as with many of the DCOM greats, the best aspects are just beneath the surface. We all know that Wendy ends up saving Shen and beating Yan Lo instead of going to Homecoming. But part of the subtle brilliance of this film is how choosing that is actually made into a bigger deal than it otherwise would have been. And that's because the climax was all about both embracing and changing destiny. Why both? Because this movie focuses on a Chinese-American family with Wendy as our lead at the center, and while destiny, tradition, and responsibility are large aspects of collectivist Eastern thinking, generally speaking, challenging status quos and challenging the idea of preordained fate and doing so as an individual is just as much a part of the general Western thought process. Wendy is Chinese, but she's also American, making her a representative of two distinct schools of thought, and she embraces both by defeating Yan Lo and saving Shen, two events that historically speaking have never occurred together until Wendy rewrote the script on how these face-offs are supposed to end. Stemming from that, it also makes that much more sense as to why Wendy is so resistant to embracing her destiny. Other than the obvious fact that everything Shen tells her seems pretty unbelievable, she and her family are contained within a more Western-leaning mentality because of the aforementioned character traits that define the parents. But once Shen enters the picture, everyone, save Grandma who already knows this stuff, gets a chance to embrace him and as a result, see more of themselves. For Wendy, it means following in the footsteps of her great-grandmother and saving the world from evil. And for her parents, it means paying more attention to their heritage and understanding how valuable it is. Wendy only faces Yan Lo when she's able to reconcile both her Eastern and Western background into a single vessel, one that could embrace fate and change it. In terms of the leads and their dynamic, it's a more culturally potent version of Geek Charming that would come out years later, and that's because this movie is also about two people with divergent perspectives coming together and seeing different parts of themselves and each other. All of this creates beautiful character progression on all levels, using culture as a catalyst for growth, and then taking it one step further by promoting not just cultural identity, but cross-cultural identity, and what it means to be a representative of two groups of people without one completely overshadowing the other. Supporting all of this is an inspired score that I would place right up there with Avalon High as one of the all-time best scores of any DCOM. The Eastern-inspired instrumentals and sounds help foster the cultural vibrancy that this movie already excels at presenting. The writing is also pretty good. Not necessarily the best, and a bit campy at times, but the characters never feel disingenuous with their dialogue or interactions, which should also be credited to the actors present here. I know I use the expression they came in and did their jobs a lot, but sometimes that's exactly what you need, especially since this movie is the DCOM most predicated on action sequences. In terms of major flaws, there really aren't too many. You might be turned off by Wendy Wu being a fairly prototypical teenage girl, but the entirety of this film gives her a lot more to do than just be that single-minded character. It doesn't work as well here relative to the brilliant work Sarah Hyland does in Geek Charming, but it still mostly works. Shin isn't always the most engaging actor in the world, but he's also playing a mission-driven monk who's lived in a temple all his life, so there probably wasn't a class on teen interactions. But, just like how Wendy and her family grew through his Eastern influence, he also grows as he's influenced by the West and learns that sometimes fate can be changed. In all honesty, I don't see too many big picture aspects that fail here. There are a handful of overly cheesy moments, yes, but by and large, this movie does way more right than wrong. That having been said, I do think that we might have had an even better movie if more cultural aspects were brought to the forefront in place of some of the more conventional DCOM ideas of parties and homecoming and high school drama. That's something Avalon High really understood how to get right, as an example. All in all, Wendy Wu is a beautifully structured, incredibly well thought out film about how cultural perspectives can seamlessly come together to create positive change both inside and out. Huge credit to the writers on this one for creating a captivating and important story that wonderfully fused together with great action set pieces in what would otherwise be a fairly straightforward good versus evil plotline for an hour and a half. It's a rare movie that pulls off the tricky balancing act of being incredibly fun to watch in addition to conveying some very important themes within its narrative. Even though I would say it just misses the top 10 all time, I still consider it one of the all-time best, and certainly one of the most beautifully unique. It goes without saying that I'd highly recommend this film for all the reasons I talked about and more, but, as I often say, the only way to know for sure is to give it a watch and decide how good it is for yourself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, throw it on a like, sub for more, and share the awesome fights everywhere. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Links down below. The coming days will bring a closer look at Swindle, and then we're counting on the top 10 best of the often underappreciated DCOM directors. So, lots to look forward to. Until then...